Where did you go to school?
And here's your name.
What do you think of what's going on right now, mate?
These evil little invisible parasites.
Satan-worshipping Freemason morons.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
We're not run by factions.
Get the fuck out of camera!
There are much more powerful international forces in play.
Is this pink eye? Is this what pink eye is? I don't fucking know what's happening.
I had to actually Google it, neo-Nazi men.
Please go outside and look at the moon quickly.
It's been crazy, guys, but guess what? It's how it is, mate.
Mate, because I want to do it slowly.
Well, I ain't spending any time on it.
Welcome to the Conditional Release Program, a podcast that delves into the netherworld of cults, crims, and con artists. I'm Jack the Insider, otherwise known as Peter Hoisted for tax purposes.
And I'm Joel Hill, and today we are going to kick off the show with a huge thanks to Watermelon Boy for the new intro, because it is great, and I love it, and it's hilarious. If you want to check him out, he is at watermelon__boy, that's 2 underscores on social media. 2 underscores,
yes, that's
and
important.
on Spotify. Give him a follow, especially on Spotify, for sure, because, I mean, there's more. There's more where that came from. Get into it. But today, we have a special edition of the Conditional Release Program featuring an interview with Rob Anderson.
Yeah, Rob is a friend of the program, a musician, a good bloke. And those are the things that define him, but he is also a victim of child sexual abuse.
Yeah, and that's not this fake cue-aligned so-called ritual abuse bullshit that we frequently target on this program, and rightly so, but the kind of protracted and awful abuse that happens at the hands of horrific institutions.
Yeah, Rob's story is not just a story of abuse and the evil bastard who perpetrated it, who thankfully is behind bars serving a long stretch in prison at the moment. Rob's story is a story of institutional failures, policing failures, and a legal system that puts the rights of perpetrators ahead of victims.
Yeah, and the interview is going to dominate our show today, and frankly, once I heard it, Jack and I agreed that we just put most of the comedy off this week.
Yes.
Just not appropriate.
Yeah, we want all our listeners to listen to this. It's an awful story, and the only good news to come out of it is that Rob is in a good space and has the support of friends and loved ones.
And we're going to casually remind listeners once again that we need your help to continue doing this, bringing you this kind of unique content every week.
Yeah, so check out our Patreon, patreon.com, the Conditional Release Program, and get behind us if you can.
And so without further ado, we'll kick off our news, but then just move straight to Rob's story.
Yeah, we remind listeners that should any of the content in today's program raise any issues for you, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or Beyond Blue on 1300 22 36 46.
To be fair, that was definitely further ado, but it was worth saying, and I'm glad you said it. So now it's on with the news. No more ado. We're done. We're done with the ado.
No more ado.
So cookers have found yet another celebrity health issue to completely co-opt to make all about themselves. And this week, Justin Bieber is on the blunt end of that instrument when he released a video explaining that he'd cancelled some tour dates due to a sudden facial paralysis known as Ramsay Hunt syndrome.
Yuck.
So Bieber explained his recovery plan in terms his listeners would understand. He said,
I got to get my rest on so I can get my face where it's supposed to be.
Yes, Bieber, you better get your rest on so you can get your face where it's supposed to be. I mean, that just feels like a good idea.
Thinking.
Yeah.
Good thinking.
Yeah, I'm into it. That's great. So we've already established that any deaths or illnesses in celebrities, especially celebrities, but anyone, will instantly be hijacked by conspiracy theorists and anti-vaxxers and just general shitbags to be explained as an adverse reaction to COVID vaccines, whichever one they just want at the time. So this was inevitable from the start. But when it comes to facial paralysis, this is their absolute bread and butter. They love this shit.
Yeah, any sort of freak injury. I mean, look, and I don't know a lot about the number of times or the number of sufferers of Ramsay Hunt syndrome there are, but it's bound not to be very many. So this is going to be one of those rare, bizarre, and slightly freaky things that they're going to jump on.
Oh, they love it. And this is the thing. So you've got a long history of capitalizing on facial paralysis because it's very evident. You've got the local conspiracy theorist and shameless grifter Elle Salzone. She's got Bell's palsy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Most people would know of Bell's palsy. It's another similar sort of stroke-like event that affects the face.
Yeah, exactly. But of course, this is the thing. It's just all going to be vaccines from here on. I don't even think Elle Salzone's Bell's palsy predates COVID vaccines. And also, let's just face it, she has a long habit of injecting cosmetic medicine into her face. But instead of that, they're like, oh, it must be the vaccine. No, my love, it's the filler that you got from Puerto Rico. I mean, what are you doing to yourself? But anyway, I mean, like, this is the thing. They absolutely love facial paralysis. When Victor Dominello turned up with Bell's palsy, it was a temporary facial paralysis. It lasted a few days, and they immediately attributed it to COVID-19 vaccines. Dominello had AstraZeneca in him, and that kind of ruins the whole mRNA thing from the USA.
Yeah,
but
because it's not an mRNA vaccine, yeah.
Exactly, but it's just COVID vaccines. They're all the same somehow. Like, they're fucking morons, you know.
Yeah.
But as you can imagine, the takes on Telegram have been absolutely dog shit on this. One genius who did a fairly straight report on the situation couldn't help himself and signed off with...
I bet that the culprit is climate change. Obviously.
Yeah, obviously, because nobody is saying that facial paralysis is a consequence of climate change, you fucking moron. I mean, it's not even funny. It's just weird.
It was an attempt at humour, I think. You know,
it's just so bad. Like, it's just like, what? Why? But then you've got others who were astonished to hear that Bieber was alive at all. And a huge thank to Soz for this one, because it is a cracking conversation pulled from Telegram.
How's this? He is said to have been executed. Or maybe it's his clone and it's malfunctioning. Just a thought.
Just a thought, yeah.
Or another one was, what? His clone died? He's been dead for a few years already. Ooh, these people are awful.
It's pretty funny. Like, I mean, there's a conspiracy theory out there that the Illuminati actually killed off Bieber in a car crash and replaced him with a clone, which explains why he used to be such a nice boy, but he's now a bit of an asshole. And he is an asshole. I'm just going to say that right now. He's a piece of shit. So the conspiracy blog reported that...
It's obvious that the original Bieber, a good Christian boy, would not have been happy with these messages, enabling the Illuminati to kill him and replace him with a lookalike who is more willing to hide messages in song.
It's great.
Makes sense.
It's great. I love the way that conspiracy theorists, like, if you like Bieber, it's got to be that his bad behavior is the work of a clone, because you just make up the narrative as you go. You just like,
and now the fill-in Bieber has got the palsy.
Oh yeah, exactly. Because, you know, probably from doing all those Satan drugs or whatever they've just made up on the spot. Well, vaccine reaction, of course. So then there's this charming missive of peace that came from a peace, love, and light type.
One of Pete's mates.
Yeah.
Yeah. From day one, he was just a little jerk off and prat. And if he ain't dead yet, I hope it drops dead soon.
Notice the it, which is definitely a
lovely.
A gender thing. Cool. What a great guy. And Stu Peters chimed in with some inside info.
You just knew he was going to chip in. I just spoke to a record label insider, which means fucking no one. I just spoke to a record label insider who says Bieber cannot say the COVID jab did this without losing his deal.
No,
what a fucking lie.
It's just a complete lie. What deal? Like, I mean, what? It's just complete horseshit. Everything about it is dumb. But this is the thing. You know, like, they just make shit up. And this is actually my favorite of them.
This is all in caps, Joel. Can I just shout it?
This is all in caps. This is very much all in caps. Look, express it like you will, but taper it down for the listeners.
Wakey Aussies. Do you actually think he took a poison jab? ? I do not believe this little soy got the shot.
Yeah, soy
Nobody
boy.
in pedo would or any politician did.
Yep.
What we are witnessing is the awakening of the masses. Hence, it's called the Great Awakening. Every event we are seeing is to wake more people up.
Mm-hmm.
God, there's a lot of exclamation marks here.
So many.
Way too many. I see many so-called awake people are saying he got the vax as if he got the vax. They know what's in it.
Yeah.
White hats who are controlling them are making them expose themselves and wake up the diet woke who still have no clue what's going on and the normies. Stop believing everything you hear on the fake news. Art of war.
Art of war.
Art of war. Optics
Art of
people,
war.
wake up. Now, there's some common sense advice.
Oh, man. I know we're meant to make this episode funny, but that is...
living in the same fucking postcode as this weird...
Just that brain is constantly on fire. So, look, there's mixed messages here, obviously. This person, one of the posts, I won't name them because I have a bit of a policy about that, but they had a Q in their name. So that really explains how, like, the white hats and stuff like that real Bozy sort of language all comes from Q on. But it is very funny. I mean, this is the thing. Like, you know, he has an adverse reaction to the vaccine, and there's all this stuff about shingles. We'll get to it later. But he also didn't, you know, because someone's got to have the hotter take. But also cookers do tend to like to hedge their bets, you know, like they move the goalpost, stuff like that. But always that person who's like, you're all idiots. I know what's really happening. The white hats are controlling them. Like, I mean, fucking shut up. So, while most of the takes are just that, which is just completely unhinged rubbish, conspiratorial nonsense just made up on the spot, a few of the more learned anti-vaxxers are trying to make this a bit more of a thing. So, in one observational study in Hong Kong I saw on Telegram, researchers found a patient with Ramsay Hunt 2 days after COVID vaccination. And this is the basis of the correlation. They did get the Pfizer shot. 2 days later, Ramsay Hunt. They figure it was something about the stress on the immune system that provoked the reaction, dormant shingles, blah, blah, blah. But this bizarre thing is they reference a paper in their findings, which literally states the Pfizer jab does not increase RHS or Bell's palsy. But another vaccine available in Hong Kong called CoronaVac, which does not use mRNA, did increase Bell's palsy. So it's like it already stinks of just like complete nonsense, because that's like, for me to pick that out is easy. So they're not doing their research. And while that flimsy correlation, backed by completely contradictory evidence, was easily enough for something for cookers to just rely on, instead of that, they've gone to their much more interesting gold standard bullshit factory, which is VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System.
Ah, that old chestnut.
Oh, fuck yeah. I mean, like, if you don't know this is a database full of made-up bullshit where cookers use it to justify their outlandish claims about vaccines. They fill it with disinformation, and then they say, look, people are dying. Some of the classic entries we've enjoyed in the past were that COVID vaccines turned one person gay and another into the Incredible Hulk, which was actually a test as to how far he could push VAERS before they would remove something, and they refused to remove it without getting his permission first. I mean, come on, guys.
Just looking around for a large green man with purple shorts.
It's just, yeah, exactly, yeah. Just wandering around with a needle sticking out of his arm. Hulk vax. So another breakthrough by armchair medical experts was in the form of finding Ramsay Hunt in the Pfizer papers. Now, I don't want to go too far into this, but recently a Freedom of Information request was granted to publish an extensive record of findings from the Pfizer trials, which includes basically every possible reaction, including simple correlations. Yeah, it's total self-report. And this is the thing. If an illness is found in a trial participant, you have to surveil it. This isn't because the jab causes the issues, but due to an abundance of caution, and, you know, it's a fucking trial. This is the whole point. They are surveilled to ensure there's no causative effect involved from the vaccine. Totally fair enough, because they actually do want to know.
Yeah.
But a mix of this Dunning-Kruger effect and an audience that absolutely knows what they want to hear has resulted in every little fucking health ailment turning up in the papers and being slashed around fucking TikTok and Telegram as proof of a link between the jab and various garden variety illnesses of varying degrees of severity. And it's just tiring. Like, it's just mountains of horseshit.
I got a wart on my penis.
Yeah, that's actually, that's herpes, and that is in the list, which is tied to all of this.
It's the vaccine.
Exactly. No, I wasn't out rooting randoms on Saturday night. No. It was the vaccine that gave you the herpes.
Yeah, better
Very
not kiss
clever
you
defense.
all the same. Yeah.
So on the other side of the political spectrum are calls on Twitter that Bieber's diagnosis is actually a result of a COVID infection. And, I mean, his wife, Hayley, had recently had a blood clot in her brain. They're a very unlucky family. And cookers jumped on this and made it all about them. But considering that COVID isn't just a respiratory disease, but one that does impact heavily on circulation, does cause a shitload of blood clots, it makes sense there could be a link. They also said there might be birth control pills, which do this in a terrifying way that I didn't know before COVID, and long-haul air travel. These are actual causes of blood clots. It makes total sense.
Yeah, well known, yeah.
But the main link speculated on here, of course, by the cookers, is the link between shingles and Ramsay Hunt. And it is true. Ramsay Hunt is caused by the varicella zoster virus, which is a form of shingles, and it can flare up in times of stress. But cookers are trying to link it to this nonsensical idea. They're not even using the vaccine so much as they're saying that monkeypox is also just shingles in disguise.
I have seen this. Yeah, I have seen this, yeah.
All a reaction to COVID vaccines. Like, it all comes down to this absurd notion that it's not just like a dormant thing that's, you know, reactivated by a bit of stress on the immune system. No, it's this whole conspiracy. Like, it's just silly.
Arse shingles. I've got arse shingles.
Yes, exactly. it is an unfortunate location for it to present. But this isn't the first time that cookers have taken issue with Bieber. And while it's well known that Justin Bieber is a huge god botherer who features Christian iconography all through his music videos and lyrics, it's gross. The cookers are convinced he's an agent of Satan because, I don't know, they're bored, but also, of course, transgender. I mean,
there you go.
Are you surprised? Bieber would not be happy with this, though, because he is publicly anti-Satan. He's not a fan of Satan one bit.
No, he doesn't like Satan. He told the crowd in London at the last date of his Purpose tour, Instagram is for the devil, explaining his exit from the social media platform. I think hell is Instagram. It's either for the devil or hell. Can't be both. Anyway, I think hell is Instagram. I'm like 90% sure. Oh, no, he's not.
He's 90% sure.
He still could be sold. But yeah,
Look, I think
hell
I'm
and the
100%.
devil.
I reckon Instagram really is Satan. I think Biebs is onto something there. Now, in wrapping up Cooking News, we're going to leave the funny stuff for next week, where we're going to look at the Freedom Embassy that the Canberra Cookers
very
have
funny.
recently erected near Old Parliament House, which is just, it's very funny. It's made of cling wrap. It's just
They
embarrassing.
have frequent erections. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if they can have too many after this, but we'll get into it next week.
It's a bit cold. Bit cold in Canberra at the moment.
Yeah, it's not a good place to be hanging out.
It is
but,
hugely funny, and we will get on that next week.
Yeah, with more news possibly, because they're running barbecues in an enclosed space. So let's see if someone dies. Anyway.
Let's see how many unplanned erections that they've got.
Yes, while they're falling asleep in a fucking
next week,
carbon monoxide haze.
Our other piece of news is really non-celebrity, or in fact, celebrities who are ugly people, and we're talking about politicians now. And this is the Democrat-controlled House Select Committee began public hearings into the storming of the Congress building on January 6, 2021. Started last Thursday evening American time. The hearings began with a statement from committee chair Benny Thompson, a Democrat. Most of them are on this committee. Benny Thompson said Donald Trump was at the center of this conspiracy, and ultimately Donald Trump, the president of the United States, spurred a mob of domestic enemies of the Constitution to march down the Capitol and subvert American democracy, unquote. It's pretty stark. The only two GOP or Republican reps are Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. They're the only Republicans on the panel. The rest of the Republicans are sitting out on this one. And the senators said, we're going to conduct our own inquiries. What, this year? Next year?
I mean, Liz Cheney is not a big fan of Trump as well. They, hardcore Republicans, often
they want her out.
Tear her to shreds.
Hardcore Trumpers want her gone, and she's really going to struggle to win her primary in Wyoming.
Yeah.
In a statement, Cheney, Liz Cheney said Trump invested millions of dollars in campaign funds to purposely spread, quote, false information, running ads he knew were false, and convincing millions of Americans that the election was corrupt and he was the true president. As you will see, Cheney added, this information campaign provoked the violence on January 6th. But perhaps we need to go back to get some perspective on all of this. We all know Trump's reaction to his defeat on November 3, 2020, but it is worthwhile remembering what he said or tweeted around that time. And 5 months before the election, and mindful what was coming his way, he can look at the polls too. He tweeted, millions of all in caps, by the way, as he's wont to do, millions of mail-in ballots. This is June of 2020, Millions of mail-in ballots will be printed by foreign countries and others. It will be the scandal of our times, unquote. 5 months away, he was already saying, if I lose, I'm going to spit the dummy. And at 2:30 a.m. on November 4, so this is the morning after the election, as the presidential vote count solidified Biden's path to victory in the Electoral College, Trump told the nation and the world, this is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. I remember him saying that because that was almost the wrong thing to say. And he thought, he goes, frankly, we did win this election.
Frankly.
I remember him saying that. And the story behind that is that he was walking around the room in the White House talking to all these sort of well-wishers who are hanging around, feeling a bit awkward about taking the martinis, and goes, well, what do I say? What do I say? And it was Giuliani who came up to him and said, just tell him it's been stolen. And he goes, oh, okay. And that's when it started. That's when the idea first, in real terms, generated. 3 days later, the Associated Press and the rest of the media declared Biden the victor. Trump, however, said, we all know why Joe Biden, didn't call him sleepy then, we all know why Joe Biden is rushing to falsely pose as the winner and why his media allies are trying so hard to help him. They don't want the truth to be exposed. You can just say exposed. But anyway, the simple fact is this election is far from over. Our campaign will start prosecuting our case in court. And they did, and they lost every single time.
Yep.
On December 30, 2020, from Mar-a-Lago, where he was spending his holidays, Trump tweeted up, January 6th, see you in DC.
Mm-hmm.
And Trumpers did come in their thousands, some from militia groups, some from the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys. At the first presidential debate in September 2020, I don't know if our listeners remember this, Trump told the Proud Boys, when Biden had asked him, in fact, not Biden, but one of the interviewers had asked him to basically denounce the Proud Boys.
Yeah.
And Trump told them to stand back and stand by.
That was so cool.
A member of the Proud Boys testified to the House committee that the president's comment effectively tripled the membership of the far-right group, right, from that September 2020 to January 6, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Its former leader, Enrique Tarrio, also said he wished he made T-shirts of the moment. On 13 January 2022, the Department of Justice unsealed an indictment against the leader of the Oath Keepers, Elmer Stewart Rhodes, sounds like he should be in Warner Brothers cartoons, and 10 associates, charging them with seditious conspiracy, the most severe charge levied against any of the alleged Capitol rioters so far. Subsequently, 4 Proud Boys, including Enrique Tarrio, have been charged with the same offence. Enrique Tarrio and 2 others pleaded not guilty last week. 306 federally charged rioters have entered guilty pleas so far, which led to the deaths of 3 people and the destruction of the House sector of the Congress building. There'll be more. The FBI is still perusing video, and there'll be people being charged with offences around the storming of the Capitol building literally for years.
Yeah, that's brutal. You wouldn't want to be waiting in the wings for that.
The first jury trial, and this is something that we spoke about in the Conditional Release Program as the conviction occurred, this is the first jury trial relating to the Capitol riots, resulted in a jury finding rioter Guy Refit, guilty on each of the 5 counts he faced after fewer than 4 hours of deliberations. US prosecutors said Refit bought a pistol and flexed cuffs to the Capitol but didn't enter the building. That's one of the nonsenses that you often see on social media about January 6th by pro-Trumpers. They say, no one was armed. They just had, like clubs and,
bullshit.
Rubbish. Absolute rubbish.
Bullshit. Yeah.
Refford had a pistol, he had a sidearm, and in the boot of his car, parked not far away, he had an AR-15 assault rifle.
100%. And, of course they got concealed weapons. The fuck are you talking about?
No, it's absolute bullshit. It's one of the bullshit things, and it's been put about by Fox News types. Said, no,
Tucker
just
Carlson
there.
loves it.
Got a bit, the Tucker Carlson types. Yeah, and there's a bit of, everyone's just got a bit.
Needs arms.
It just got a bit out of hand,
Yeah.
That's the argument.
It's like a teenager's party.
If you think that it's just got a little bit out of hand, Reffett, for a start, is awaiting sentencing. It's actually his sentencing was due last week. For some reason, it's been delayed. He's awaiting sentencing, and he could be sentenced to prison for as long as 60 years.
That's
and
insane.
I guarantee you, this seditious conspiracy charges against, what have we got, 15 people, Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. I guarantee you that is term of your natural life in prison.
Wow.
If those people are found guilty. A lot of people have pleaded guilty. A lot of people have flipped. There are a number of Oath Keepers who have flipped. There are a number of Proud Boys who have flipped, including the one who provided testimony to the House Select Committee. And since the creation of the committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol building, the committee has interviewed hundreds of people, issued dozens of subpoenas, and sorted through thousands of documents relating to the riots. The committee offered an overview of its findings that then President Donald Trump was at the heart of a multi-stage attempted coup to retain power. That's the way you got to see it. And it showcased bits of testimony from former Attorney General Bill Barr, Capitol rioters, a Capitol police officer, a documentary filmmaker who was looking at the Proud Boys at the time and has all the footage of them running around and conducting a bit of seditious conspiracy.
Yeah, yelling out, I'm conducting seditious conspiracy.
So all of that is there. And there they are smiling for the cameras. And even the president's elder daughter, Ivanka Trump. I don't know if you saw that. We'll get to that in a minute. The House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack held its first hearing after sifting through all of this evidence. So these are their first public hearings. Liz Cheney is the vice chair. Benny Thompson is the chair. They presented the committee's case to show Trump attempted to subvert the 2020 presidential election and bring to light his allies who assisted him along the way. Members of the Proud Boys stormed the Capitol. They were the first. The Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, they were the first guys up there, and they were conducting what is basically a paramilitary exercise. Some are accused of coordinating to prevent the Capitol Police from sealing off the tunnels of the building, so they could go and hang Mike Pence, which is what they were chanting to do. Cheney said, and this is really interesting, Rep. Scott Perry, who refused to testify to the committee, he's a major Trumper, directly asked for a pardon from Trump for working to install Jeff Clark as Attorney General to further investigate the results. The Attorney General Barr had gone, and Trump was trying to install a junior attorney as Attorney General who would basically try do his best to
just do whatever
the
Trump
result.
told him to do, basically.
And Cheney went on to say, she also said other Republican members of Congress asked for pardons from the president, so they knew how bad this was.
They were ready for it.
This is not just now. This is just why it's been played on Fox News as a kind of no. It's just look, everyone got a bit out of control, and it's not. It's not that the president wanted this happen. On the opening of proceedings, the committee showed a short clip of a video testimony from Ivanka Trump, part of the 8 hours she spent before the committee. She was asked about Attorney General Barr's assertion there was no fraud to be found to overturn the presidential election. It affected my perspective, Ivanka said. I respect Attorney General Barr, so I accepted what he was saying. Very interesting that Ivanka and her husband, Jared, had determined very early on, really from that moment on the 4th of November where Trump started babbling about a stolen election, that they were just going to hightail it out of DC, and they basically did. They packed up their home and then they moved to Miami. They knew New York was not going to be a pleasant place for them. So Jared Kushner really accepted this at the outset, and they were pleased for him to come and basically go and talk some sense into Trump. And he said, look, Trump's fallen in with Giuliani, and there's just no way I'm going to get involved in that. So, we did have a look at Jared Kushner's judgment earlier on. Sometimes it's been misplaced and a bit odd, but he certainly knew exactly what was coming there.
Oh, yeah, totally. He's a piece of shit, but, he's not crazy. He's just a terrible, terrible capitalist piece of shit.
Yeah, but he understood. Yeah, he understood the full gravity of what was being done. And through it all, Trump has labelled the committee's inquiries a witch hunt. He loves that word. He loves that phrase. And a witch hunt. Amusingly, Joel, he and his followers, advocates of free speech, freedom, have banned opposing voices on the pro-Trump Truth Social, a Twitter-like social media platform that has been a spectacular failure. So we've had people come in there and just talking about what happened on January 6th. Here, Ivanka Trump said this.
Just banned, completely banned.
And they get
not
banned.
even just like a bit of Facebook jail, like actually banned. It is so embarrassing how these people are like, there's not only just thin-skinned, but the hypocrisy is just next level stuff.
You don't think they mean free speech like Trump and Giuliani and maybe one other, and they just they can't pronounce the word, so it's like free. It comes out as free.
Utter horseshit.
We want free speech. We're on free speech. It's Trump.
That's just
okay. Now the GOP remains visibly supportive of Trump. We'll keep an eye on this and we'll report to listeners as it goes. But it'll drop off. The GOP is going to drop off him. Trump is finished. This what it does actually confirm is that he is finished. His own daughter thinks he's a pathological liar and a fantasist. The irony is if he showed some dignity and honour in defeat, he'd be a chance in 2024, but not now. He won't end up in jail. No, he's not. He cannot run in 2024. I'll explain why in future programs. It just can't happen because everyone else has moved on except for him. And so he either backpedals and looks like an idiot, or he continues to perpetrate this lie that people just don't believe. Yeah. It just won't win him too many independent voters. He'll get smashed in the primaries. And DeSantis will kick him to death in the primaries if he runs with this shit. But he won't end up in jail over this. That's not the way this is going to go. There may be some criminal charges for those who are, and there are, against those who are directly involved that will be coming. But this will just be a stain on his presidency that just simply cannot remove. And interestingly, 20 million people
that
watched.
Is big.
That's big numbers.
Especially for something so dry as this.
that's that's a Seinfeld finale. You know,
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
is big.
that's a big number. So 20 million people tuned into this for the first day's proceedings, and they know exactly who Trump is and the
Yeah.
dangers he represents. The old orange cooker is cooked.
And it sounds like his chances of rooting Ivanka are also on the fucking rails.
In today's special edition of the Conditional Release Program, we have an interview with Rob Anderson. Now, so many episodes of the show deal with Q-line cultism, featuring the madness of wild and unsubstantiated allegations of child sex abuse. The FBI has made it clear the Q-line fabrications cause great harm and take up time that could be better spent investigating where actual child sex abuse has occurred. The interview with Rob today is a true story. It is a story of a victim of child sex abuse. The abuse Rob suffered lasted for more than 3 years and included the worst forms of sexual abuse, including rape. And while Rob's tormentor was convicted and jailed for the abuse, in the peculiar way these matters are prosecuted, many of the perpetrators' crimes have been airbrushed from existence, at least as far as the criminal justice system is concerned. It is just one failing in a long list of failures Rob had to endure, from the school he attended and where the abuse began, to the police who failed for years to conduct a serious criminal investigation, and to the deficiencies of our criminal and civil courts, which place more emphasis on the perpetrator's rights than those of his victims. And this is Rob's story. Yeah, joining me today on Just Asking Questions is Rob Anderson. And Rob Anderson has an extraordinary story to tell. It's a story of child sexual abuse, but more than that, it's a story of complete institutional failure, both the institution where the abuse occurred, which is Trinity Grammar School in Sydney, policing failures and failures around the courts. It's great to have you here to tell us your story, Rob. Thank you very much.
No, thanks for having me on, Joe. If we're on radio, I'd say, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yes, we do know. I mean, Rob and I have known each other for a fair while now, and we consider ourselves pretty good friends. And you do have a remarkable story to tell. But let's start telling that story. In the very first day you're at Trinity Grammar School, it's an APS school, isn't it? It's one of the gun private schools in Sydney. What was your first day like at Trinity?
Well, mate, I actually came across a photo doing a lot of this sort of stuff, and it was me at 4.5, looking very proud on the front doorstep, all dressed up in the school uniform, and heading off to a bright, great future.
Full of hopes and dreams, a little bit of trepidation about setting your foot in that big, august-looking school, slightly scary, I suppose.
Yeah, but it was actually right next door to the house, so it was a neighbourhood thing. We were right near Trinity.
Right.
I'd actually been enrolled to Newington, but parents bought another house, and off I went.
So you started at Trinity Grammar School as in kindergarten, in effect, yes?
Yep. 4.5 years old, mate, and everything was great. Everything was looking great, as it did for the next 5 or 6 years. Really.
5 years, I'd say 5 or 6 years. You started at kindergarten and the abuse commenced in grade 6. We'll get to that in a moment. But now tell me about your last day at school, and not as a school student at this stage, because it's 45 years later. You have to meet, well, perhaps it wasn't on the school campus, but you had to meet some of the bigwigs from your school, and you had to explain to them what had happened to you, how it had affected your life, and how you were completely within your rights to feel let down by them.
Yeah, well, that's right, mate. We had what's called the DPR, the Direct Personal Response, which is an optional extra at the end of your
National Redress
Scheme. And, I thought I'd take up that opportunity after I hadn't really had any face-to-face with them. You don't get that in a legal process in the end, as you know. It's a very different world. And no, finally I was direct. Well, unfortunately, the headmaster had to be Skype because of COVID in the end, but he was there, and there was the junior headmaster, and also one of the, well, I guess he's a parent from the school council was there as well.
And this is a school that basically had, over the space of that 45 years, fought you tooth and nail in regards to accepting liability and responsibility for what had been done to you. You must have been angry.
Mate, full of anger, and as you know, I mean, they went back, I mean, they'd officially known since 97 when they used the statute laws to just get me to go away. They changed, and then we were back, but nothing was different.
Just to explain, many institutions relied upon the statute of limitations in regard to civil actions for child sexual abuse. It meant that outside of a fixed period, I think it was 5 years, no compensation or no civil action could go ahead. Now, those laws have changed, but it actually meant that a lot of schools didn't have to keep records, could easily just dispose of unpleasant facts and incidents that had occurred more than 5 years prior. And that's certainly the way Trinity Grammar responded to your report of you being indecently dealt with and raped at the school or by a teacher at the school.
Yeah. Well, what was particularly disappointing in amongst a lot of disappointment and a few high points was the fact that they'd already, our the final court case, because I'd been to the police 3 times over the years. Very luckily for me, my Royal Commissioner, when I went to the Royal Commission and had no expectations, I thought I was just going to tell them about Trinity, was Bob Atkinson. He reopened the case and we got our criminal matter, which was fantastic. And I know we're going to talk about
that later, yeah.
But when we came out of court, having put him away, and their public comments was how much they support the boys for coming forward and they'd stand with us and that sort of thing. But in the background, they had no intention of settling at all.
When it came to actually the business of accepting liability,
yes,
a lawyer's way of saying responsibility, they shirked it.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Yeah.
And we'll get to the full extent of that shortly, but we need to go back and visit the abuse. Your abuser at Trinity Grammar School was a teacher by the name of Neil Futcher.
Yeah, Neil Futcher, and he joined that last year of our primary school, which strangely for me, with everything that went on in that 1 year, felt like 2 years, and there was a bit of confusion in trials, but it was all sorted out. But
So when you began your last year at the Trinity Grammar Preparatory School, the grade 6 there, Neil Futcher was started teaching at Trinity Grammar Prep School, and he was the disciplinarian.
Well, they were all allowed to use the cane, but he took it to another level. He revelled in it. There were some teachers even back then that were, they could use it, but they didn't use it with any force. It was more of a tap. But no, for Futcher, it was something that he revelled in. And I mean, I've heard many stories later, and it's happened directly to someone I know. But not only did he cane you, he would go as far as to say to pull your pants down and pull your ass cheeks apart while I do it,
Right.
And he was vicious. The kids nicknamed him early on Futcher the Butcher. And for better or worse, from my point of view, he was my cricket and football coach. So that was my first introduction to him. And it was a strange thing because he also wanted to be the cool teacher. So, boys that age were starting the hormones are starting. And if a teacher, as he was, has a pornographic magazine in his car and lets you have a look at it, well, you sort of do.
That was the first attempt, basically. We call that grooming, don't we?
We know what it's called now. I wouldn't have known that word back in the day at all. I don't think I even knew what the word pedophilia was back in the day. But so he had that, and also he was teaching my best friend. He was his direct class teacher. And my best friend, great bloke, we're still great mates to this day. But he was the class clown. He was the comedian. Occasionally he went a bit too far. Occasionally he didn't, and some teachers just couldn't take it. But Futcher was going to straighten him out. That's what he told his parents. He used that sort of in with the parents. And, mate, he caned him ruthlessly. I mean, viciously. You'd call it torture these days and child abuse, really.
It would certainly be illegal today. It would constitute physical assault.
It would, mate.
And serious physical assault.
And this was like, people who'd maybe been through the system. You'd have heard of 6 of the best. But, I mean, 6 of the best was nothing. Yeah, he might get that 3 or 4 times in a day, you know. Eventually, though, this was supposedly working, and Mr. Futcher turned around and said, because of the great improvement he'd seen in my friend, that he was going to take him and a few other select kids on a camp.
Right.
About the middle of the year, this would have been, and Wayne was allowed to choose a friend to go with him, you know.
And that was it.
And I was his best mate, so he said, "Hey, do you want to come camping?" You know, and of course we were thrilled. It sounded great, you know. And
there were a number of these camps, weren't there?
there was as time went on, but
And
and
one
again,
in Kangaroo Valley, I believe.
yeah, the old no, that was another place. No,
Right.
these were out at there was nothing there at Macquarie Fields.
Oh God, yeah.
To the point that, you know, the police even probably got it wrong, and for a long time it was referred to as Lake Macquarie in a lot of the court documents,
Right.
but it was actually Macquarie Fields,
Before
which
it
in the
was
day
settled,
was just
just nothing.
nothing, and I don't know how he'd come on it. We've actually found the area later.
Yeah, it's
On the
suburb
Georges
in-
River, and,
yeah.
you know.
suburb in the outer southwest of Sydney.
Yeah, but I mean, it's that grooming thing again, mate. We were going down there on a number of occasions, but similar thing happened every time, you know. Tents would be set up, but then, hey, boys, we're all here on our own. Get your kid off, you know. And nothing wrong with a bit of skinny dipping squat. It is quite freeing, really.
And he's
you know.
watching all of this,
But
or did
then
he
when-
involve?
Did he? Oh, he got involved too, but,
Yeah.
you know, little by little, as they say.
Little
It's
by
that-
little.
It's that little by little.
Did you feel that he was, looking back at it now, that he was trying to establish trust?
Oh, definitely. I mean, with hindsight, it's so obvious and so clear now. But being a child, and these guys are clever, as you know. You know, many of them are. They might be horrible, horrible people, but they're very good at what they do. Unfortunately,
Very
you know.
clever. Yeah. We do that. We do see that side in grooming, in particular. That people like Futcher would concentrate on boys that they might think they have the trust of parents,
Yep.
that they might have, or that perhaps the parents were not going to they sort of realised that the parents were not going to kick up a fuss or react. There might be...
In our case, it was classic because my dad was working all the time. He worked 6 or 7 days a week. The other chap's dad had a full-time small business too. He worked in 7 days a week. And these parents were working these sort of hours to send kids to schools like Trinity, you know, and pay the school fee.
And Futcher would have known these things.
Yep.
Yeah, and basically preyed upon you on those things alone.
Look, the third boy from our school, great mate, again, his father was absent. So it was a single mum situation.
Yep.
We're all a bit sporty.
Yep.
Always absent fathers. Mum's always the one at the soccer game or the footy game, you know, or the cricket.
Mm.
And, you know, he'd chum them all up, you know.
So in the course of this year, or year 6 at Trinity Grammar School, with this grooming occur, it led to, and I don't expect you to go into great detail, but this led to very serious sexual abuse.
Well, mate, it then followed that, you know, he knew where your house was and things. And again, it was as simple as...
He stalked you. He actually stalked you.
Well, he stalked me all my life, as I found out later. He knew where I lived longer after I had no interest in him, except what I couldn't get away from. But, he stalked us. He worked down the parents. He became the, you know, come round. And, and then finally, again, it was the old take me and Wayne to play squash.
Right.
I'll take the boys to play squash now. You know, the mate was... You know, it was great. You know, we'll go out, and nothing too much had happened up to now. There'd been a bit of touching, but like I said, a bit of showing you the magazines. It all seemed a little bit harmless, and, you know, all right. And we found ourselves, and the first time we actually played squash, you know, and we might have done it for a couple of occasions. Then one day he turned up and said Wayne couldn't come.
So it was just you and him?
Just me and him, and we ended up after that, you know, we played squash, and it was a very casual... Look, I got to call back my place, get something. How about we'll go and you can jump in the shower and do that, my joint, you know? Mm-hmm. All seemed quite fine, really, you know. Until I was in the shower, and suddenly he was in the shower there with me, mate. And from then on, unfortunately, very, very serious sexual penetration and everything started.
Yeah, so we are looking at the absolute top end of the scale in terms of offending.
Yeah. And then threatened me, you know. that drive home threatened me.
If it's not too much trouble, you tell me what the threats that he would give you when he was dropping you home, or when these offences ended.
The bits that really stand out, and that drive back, it was very strange. And I remember he pulled over about a kilometre from my house. It was on the street, I can see it all. But and he just said to me, no one's going to find out about this, And at that stage, you don't know where this is going. You're in a car with a guy. You're going to be complicit now,
Yeah.
And it was, he played on the fact that, yes, I'm an adopted child. Your parents don't really love you, all that sort of stuff.
Wow.
They'll never believe you. And if they believe you, also, finally, and if it ever comes out, I'll kill you and your brothers and sisters and your family. And again, we'd already been introduced to the fact through camping and this that he had guns.
Right.
So
you
it's the multi-layer.
Did you feel firstly that you were complicit in the abuse?
I felt from that moment on, from the moment in that car, that I said it was all right because I wanted to get home that day.
Right.
And I wanted to protect
you. Would have been in a state of shock.
And I wanted to protect, this guy's threatening my family. No, I'll do whatever,
So that's after the first abuse. He's saying he's going to kill your family.
Kill the family. And even, no one's going to believe you. Everything you could possibly do.
So prior to this, up into your grade 5 level, you've been announced as a school monitor, a sort of a preparatory school, primary school sort of version of a prefect. You're doing well at sport. I mean, how did you respond to the trauma into your grade 6 and into your year 7s?
Well, certainly when it went on, people again, my parents will say they look back now, they can pinpoint when something happened, grades dropped, I became a little bit more of a handful at school, a little bit more disruptive at home, all those sort of things. But again, it's all with that great thing called hindsight, isn't it?
Yeah, and you're getting into that age where you're coming into adolescence. And
it could be quite normal stuff to some extent, yeah.
Did you know that he was abusing other kids at this stage? By year 7, year 8?
Even to this day, I've never discussed it with the closest one from the matter, not in detail. We don't know what happened to each other, and of course with the court case you don't go in when the other person's testifying. So I always suspected, and he said he was doing the other kids as well.
Right, he told you?
Oh yeah, to make it normal. It's this normalisation thing,
Okay.
They like it, it's all good, isn't this, this is what you do. And at that age, in one part of your brain, you sort of accept some of that, It's a very confusing.
Look, we want to touch on just briefly. In fact, we'll move forward to that day of justice, right? So, how did you end up at school? Did you go to year 12 and do the HSC, all that sort of stuff?
No, well, again, there's a whole story in this, and as you know, there's a bigger podcast that my friend is doing, and you're involved a bit with that, and that'll flush out the whole story. Fortunately for me, the headmaster at Trinity at the time was in his own sexual problems. We actually had a current affair turn up at speech day and accused him of going over the top in what he was telling the older boys in his sex education class. It looked like something out of Monty Python's Meaning of Life,
Right.
Apparently he was telling graphic stuff. And so there was a bit of a thing, and my mother actually said, right, that's the end, you're pulling you out of this school. And I was then sent on to Barker. Well, Futcher, from maybe 2 months at Barker's, things seemed really different because this guy wasn't there. And then I walked out the gates.
How old were you then?
So we're talking. So I changed in year 7.
Year 7. Okay.
So but, still pretty young, 13, I guess, 12, 13.
So you think you've gotten rid of your abuser, but then he keeps. And
stalking. Then I walked out the gates one day, and there he was, and it all started again.
Must have been terrifying.
Oh, these are the things that stand out. I remember that moment, just think, like, Christ, it's never going to end, is it? And at the same time, how stupid could I be that it would? It's only, And of course, he aided himself with the teachers at Barker. He'd happily just walk onto the grounds, which is very different these days,
Yeah,
you know.
can't be done.
Most of these places are gated these days. But yes, unfortunately for me, and of course then I was isolated too. I was a new boy at a new school with no real friends. And probably if we'd stayed at Trinity, maybe we'd got to an age and we were a solid group. We'd known each other for a long time. Looking back now, I think maybe that was another missed opportunity. You know, we're getting older, maybe we'd have done something. But instead, I was now isolated on my own. New school, couldn't say anything to anyone and got to play the game again, you know.
What we know from the Royal Commission is that on average, the reporting period between the abuse and the day that someone walks into a police station to make a formal complaint is, I think, 25 years in men and I think 21 in women. Don't quote me on that, but a lot of time, over 2 decades elapsed. When did you first report to police?
Yeah, and just quickly looking at those sort of figures and the friends I've seen around me, I'd say they're very accurate. And the people I've met,
it's taken over.
It's taken longer.
Yeah.
In my case, it was probably brought on a little bit earlier. For me, it was having kids.
Right.
And then there was an Operation Paradox the police were running, which
right.
I think would be probably close to one of their first attempts to promote something
That's
where
right.
they wanted people to come forward. Unfortunately, when I did come forward, I went to my local police station in Terrigal and basically got lip service that they'd taken his name. They walked away for a few minutes, probably had a coffee out the back. I don't even know if they typed his name in, but they came out and said there was no record of him. Thanks for that. See you later.
So they've done a basic check, I presume, a basic check to see if Neil Futcher had a criminal antecedents, and found out that he didn't.
No
so
strikes. So
that's Operation Paradox.
That was that.
I think that from memory, it was a dial a 1-800 number.
Yeah, or go
and
to
report it,
go
to a police station and report child sex abuse. This is just tell me if I'm wrong. Was that inspired by the Woodrow Commission? Because the Woodrow Commission had dealt with clear relationship between pedophiles and police. In some cases, pedophiles were paying police for not so much protection, but for inside information when other police may be coming to get them, so they be given a bit of a heads up so they could disappear. We found out during the Woodrow Commission too that the Child Protection Squad was known as the Nappy Squad within the New South Wales Police Force at the time, because it just wasn't taken seriously, and basically. Yeah, often you would find detectives who had fallen ill of their colleagues were often transferred to the Child Protection Unit as a form of punishment. What time are we talking about when you actually walked in the door at Terrigal? Do you remember the year?
I'm thinking of 93, mate.
Okay,
roughly.
So it's pre-Woodrow Commission, and the New South Wales Police Force at that time, as I said, was just completely hopeless in regard to the investigation of child sexual assaults. There's no excuse for it. There is simply none, because up until really the immediate post-World War II period, I mean, this sort of abuse, that you sustained, was a capital. It was a capital crime.
Yeah, you've mentioned that to me before, which is incredible.
So it's extraordinary. So you've gone to police. You think sort of sometime in 1991, they brushed you basically.
Yeah, and people have asked me about that. And to be honest, mate, I came out almost relieved, I think, because I thought I'd probably have to tell them everything, and I didn't have to tell them bugger all, as it turned out.
Detailed statement, yeah.
Yeah, and so that was that. And
it's just incredible, isn't it?
And you speak to a lot of people, for me, I guess, and a lot of them refer to it, we call it the black box. We bury all these secrets in, we push it down as far as you can, and you hope you're never going to open it. I guess that was the first time that I squeezed it open a little bit, you know.
There were other occasions when you reported too. You weren't going to let them out again. So there are other occasions when you reported, and again, you did find another failure.
Yeah, in 97, I was encouraged to go back again. I told someone actually what had happened the first time, and obviously it was still
go to the police,
causing me issues. I was still talking about it to people, very few people, but this person I knew fairly well. I was touring around in the band with them. They were actually the manager of the band at the time. came out one night and they just encouraged me, look, you got to do more, you know.
You're a muso touring around.
Yeah.
So, and when you did take someone into your trust and told them these stories, you'd say, because it's a common thing to say, go to the police.
Yeah.
So what happened when you did go to the police the second time?
I think we're talking early 97 now. I went back and totally different, you know. I'm at Ballina Police Station. This bloke in his blue uniforms, unfortunately, thought, oh my God, no doubt. But, you know, in we went and we actually sat down. Yeah, we sat down and he took a statement. He took, at that stage, which was my first official full statement, you know, as full as it was then. And there'd been lots of subsequent ones since, and top-ups and corrections or, you know, straighten this out.
But a fairly long process, I imagine.
Well, it actually seemed like, a couple of hours even, you know, and it was grueling and it was hard, but it seemed like this is what police actually do, you know, so maybe this is going to happen this time. Well,
what happened?
Well, again, they said the case was running very well, but I was in Ballina and they were in Sydney. The bloke had handed it off.
So it got to the Child Protection Unit.
Well, it reached someone, and
CIB
to be honest,
level.
I still don't even know where it ended up. But as you know, because I've told you the story, the final insult on that one was I was so excited. It might even be 96 because it was Christmas. And just before, and they rang me to say they were going to arrest him. Oh, what? Gee, you know, yay, hey, you know, going to arrest him. This is real. We're moving forward. I didn't hear anything for a few weeks and I rang him back in the new year and got told that unfortunately that as they were about to leave to arrest him, Jack, you wouldn't believe it, but a bank job had happened. And they were called off on the bank job. So instead of arresting him, they'd rung him up on the phone and asked him if he'd done it. And, of course, he denied everything and lawyered up. And we were then told that...
my understanding of what happened there was that that investigation had done very little other than warn him that they were,
coming,
in effect, looking into him.
Yeah.
And it gave him the opportunity to destroy evidence.
Yeah.
It gave him the opportunity to basically prepare his story, prepare his alibis, his version of events that obviously would conflict with yours.
Yeah. And again, a funny aside, but even when he right at the end, his lawyer tried to use that as mitigating circumstances that he'd been worried from all this time, all these years ago, you know, that we were coming for him. Well, he certainly had a chance to get prepared. And
the armed robbery, which sounds very strange, doesn't it? I mean, it does sound very strange that you've got the police say, "Oh, look, you know, we were all ready to go," and then there was a robbery, so we couldn't really do anything that day.
Well, in my naivety, mate, I actually went along with it. I fully said, "Well, I totally understand. You know, You've got time to do my case. It's an older matter. We're getting there, and you've got an immediate thing, boys. I understand that totally." But then it was only a month or so after that I got word through the DPP that they were no longer going to proceed with the case because they didn't think they'd get a prosecution, and that one of the other witnesses had also dropped out, which also turned out not to be true. But, you know, we didn't find these things out for 2 years later either.
Well, how long did it take before the cops started to take your matter seriously?
Well, it really was, 2010 Royal Commission, I think?
Right.
Wasn't it?
Got
the right year?
Yeah, I think 2010 it was called. I think it began hearings in 2011. That's right. Yeah.
And I probably went in 2011, 2012. And I was up in Queensland at the time and got a message that I'd probably have to go in for about half an hour and tell them what happened, you know. And it was my date, and I went in and... from another thing that I'll always be grateful was that we got the ex-police commissioner, Bob Atkinson, was my commissioner. I was in the room for over 2 hours with him in the end.
Former Queensland police officer, outstanding human being, as I understand it. Yeah.
And he heard my story and wanted to know everything about it. And at the end he said, you know, can I reopen this case for you? And he even brought up at the time, like, did they put wires on you back in the day or any? I said, none of that, mate, nothing like that, you know. But he reopened the case, but they did a bit of background work, got it to a point where he handed it on to major sex crimes in Parramatta, He took up the running for a short time before handing it on to, one of my heroes from my life, great detective John Pollock, who...
John Pollock drove the investigation.
He did.
Were you aware that if the school was contacted at all, or whether they cooperated with police?
Everything I've been told through all of this is that at every hurdle the school was uncooperative. They certainly weren't rushing to help. And in fact, the former headmaster of the junior school, Keith Sanders, deliberately avoided a police interview and then died, as did, unfortunately for us, the headmaster of the senior school, who I'd also heard was about to have his own little interview. So,
and even things like records of employment, where students were, what classes they were in, and so forth, had basically
that was
either been destroyed or not stored properly.
The most cynical part for me will always be in the trial and the civil matter, where they plain-faced say that they've lost those records for those exact 5 years. Any other year, no problem, Your Honour. And we've lost that particular insurance company. We know we were insured because we have to be legally, but we can't find who was doing it at the time.
So the year the abuse occurred is... What year are we talking about there?
It started when I was just
19?
12, well...
19?
Yeah, well, 10 years old was when the grooming started, but the real abuse started about 11, 12.
He's a very dangerous man, not only doing that, but stalking you. And now we're in probably, a good 35 years later... And there's finally a police investigation, despite the fact that you had contacted the police some 12 years earlier and nothing was done. And then we had a sort of dodgy investigation that occurred after that didn't come up with anything. And then Futcher is charged.
Futcher's charged. And again, I mean, I can talk about all these things now. In the who knows, if we'd gone to trial earlier, there was just me. Through the Royal Commission probably and things and publicity around the whole matter.
Yes.
By the time we get to trial, there's now 6 of us.
Right.
The DPP are claiming he's going to go for separate trials and he'll probably get it. That was very worrying. But in the end, sanity, I would say, prevailed, and we got a trial with all 6 of us before the same jury.
Was that at the order of the court that can occur that way?
Yes.
Yes.
He did try for separate.
He had tried separate trials, which would have been grueling and looked to sort of mitigate his offending, because if he'd been convicted of one, that couldn't be transferred. Knowledge of that couldn't be transferred into a subsequent trial. And so the courts made the right call there.
And we got a specialist judge, Judge Gurdon, which I fully applaud the New South Wales government for doing, setting that up.
It's a highly specialised business, isn't it? Even at that policing level, you obviously ultimately found a very good investigator.
Yes. Yep.
It's a highly skilled and unique skill, and that just normal CIB detectives are not going to be up to stuff with this, particularly if they've had no particular training in investigating sex crimes.
Yeah.
So.
And as it turned out, Detective Pollock got Detective of the Area Year Award for that, but he also, our case was the final case for him, yeah.
And he retired after that.
He retired after that. And,
well done, him.
Yeah.
So...
partly because of the case had taken a toll.
Had you received any contact from the school throughout that criminal trial? Nothing?
Nothing directly. The only thing that was being done by them was they were putting the emails out to the parents saying how much they stood by us and what proud of us for coming forward.
Oh, they were proud of you,
Very
yes.
proud of us.
Well done. And this is post-Royal Commission, of course. So
yes, where they'd done very badly already.
There'd already been serious questions raised about Trinity Grammar and the behaviour of a group of students who'd fashioned a dildo in woodwork.
Yeah.
We won't stick on that, but there are clearly some problems there, and there are clearly some very significant problems with the school headmaster, now deceased.
Which has come evident since. I mean, we had no idea that the chap that came along with Futcher, another teacher, Bettridge at the time, he's turned out to be a convicted pedophile, convicted of 126, I think it was, at Blue Mountains Grammar.
Wow.
And to my knowledge, he killed himself in prison while awaiting further charges.
Right. So the school, Trinity Grammar, it's just not checked in it?
Well, and there was a further teacher there, and we're talking the same years. These are out of 4 teachers. There's one of these 3 you could get, Neil Futcher, Bettridge, and another one, Norm Duffy, who police were on their way to arrest him and found he'd already taken his own life.
So yeah, look, it's interesting how these things occur. And I've looked at this sort of offending, particularly in Catholic schools, and some Catholic schools with good leaders, with good principals, often clerical leaders, they don't have these issues. But others, there's a culture that just sort of festers there.
And unfortunately, we've since heard that direct pedophilia allegations against that now dead headmaster. So, I wonder how far it goes.
Yeah, it does not surprise me to hear that. No. Put it that way.
No.
So, I'll just run through the list. There were, as you say, 5 victims and yourself, so 6 in total.
Yep.
And Futcher was convicted of 8 counts of buggery, 10 counts of indecent assault, 1 count attempt to procure for an act of indecency, and 2 counts procure for an act of indecency, and 1 count of assault with intent to commit an act of buggery. So he's convicted pretty much for the lot.
Mm-hmm.
And he was sentenced to 18 years in prison.
18 years it's 22 times I got to hear the jury foreman say guilty. It was a powerful day.
How did you feel? Yeah, how did you feel then?
Oh, that was such a powerful day,
Did he look at you? Did you look at him? Futcher, that is.
No, he wasn't looking at us by that stage. And we were behind him in the court main,
Did you sense the tremor when the sentence was handed down?
Oh, look, for us, it was just the overwhelming relief and I must say, the jury foreman did it in a wonderful style. He paused, he gave it the gravitas it deserved all 22 times, but the first time, the first charge, and the judge, as you know, they run through it, they spell it out. How do you find the defendant? And he paused, he leant forward to the microphone, and he said, guilty. Well, the wave of emotion, we turned to each other in court, mate, and a day I'll never forget, that's for sure.
This is a good 30 years after the abuse.
No, yeah.
It's a long time coming.
Mm-hmm. And we were lucky enough to meet some of the jury members later, which you're allowed to do once the trial's away, and came and had a few drinks, and actually 9 of the jury members had come back to see what was going to happen to him, which surprised both the police and the prosecutors. They said usually once they're released from something like this, they want to get away as far away, put some distance between the last 6 weeks of their life.
Yeah.
In fact, they were that invested in what happened to this man and us, I guess, that they came back and
Did you see the body twitch when he got the full 18? When he got the 18? That's 18 on the roof, so 11 with 11 with the prospect of parole.
Well, and the beauty, of course, is that as you know, the sentence isn't handed down that day, so he doesn't know quite what he's facing. But what he is facing is, for the first time, he's not leaving the court by the door the rest of us are leaving by. And it's a lovely thing in the district court in Sydney when the back wall opens up.
Yeah.
And suddenly these two burly...
Take the prisoner away.
That's it. And he was ready to... he was full of protestation. It's not right. I'm not guilty.
Did he actually say that out loud?
Look, he just said things along that were being said. He thought he'd somehow get out of this. Can we, no, you're going that way today. No. And that was brilliant. I mean, as a victim, to watch him go through that dark space was, again, another powerful moment.
So that was a really strong moment.
And the signal from the judge that he was going to jail. You're not coming to home, so you're not sentenced today, but we already know you're going to jail for a while.
Yeah.
So start
remanded
today.
in custody.
Yeah, start today.
We can start the count today.
Yeah.
Look, very powerful moment for you too. But then there are other failures yet to come, you know. You're determined to sue the school.
Well, again,
it had failed you in a duty of care that it had to you as a 10-year-old boy.
Yeah, but even that, mate, neither time when the civil matters were tried, in 97, it was a country lawyer. I went to him, I said, look, the police have stuffed this matter up. How can I do any more? He said, why don't you try suing the school? If you sue the school, it's all got to come up again. I had no intention. I was not after money, nothing like that. I wanted Futcher in jail. That was what we're after. So the country lawyer fired a letter off to him, and all we got back was, too bad, 1990 statute of limitations.
Statute of limitations.
You got nothing, go away, which we did. The bloke said, this is what we got, and that was it, you know.
And you would have to understand, and listeners perhaps, it might be a bit difficult for you to understand, but when you've got, as the Royal Commission has determined, a 25-year on average distance between the offending and the reporting, then having a 5-year period of statute of limitations is just completely inadequate. Those laws have changed across Australia. I don't think there are any states now that have dropped out of them. So we have no statute of limitations on child sex abuse matters, and that changed in New South Wales, which, and I'm thinking that it changed in New South Wales around about 2015, and that sort of period anyway. So that allowed you to sue.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And again, it was not my idea. This was told to me in that Royal Commission thing by Bob Atkinson, said to me, and by the way, I think you should get a lawyer and do the civil matter against Trinity.
It's sensible advice. I mean, you might say in the review mirror that it puts you through a great deal. We'll talk about that very briefly, but I have, and we'll talk about the National Redress Scheme and how that has helped you, and perhaps not been a great help in other aspects. But leaving yourself just available to the National Redress Scheme, when other people have spoken to me, I've said, look, let me find you some lawyers that are very good at this, and you sue them. You hit them where it hurts.
Yeah. And so it was put to me not by, and again, I read later Trinity were calling me irrational for launching legal action. Well, honestly, you're actually calling
They
Bob
called you a
Atkinson.
hero. They called you a hero.
Yes, but
hero for coming forward and getting rid of this horrible person.
That's not the view of the head of the school council, who was a lawyer. He called the whole thing irrational, that I would start action, and I read it thinking, well, it wasn't actually me that started it. It was the advice of the Royal Commissioner,
one of the commissioners on the bench of the Royal Commission. So, and it was good advice. I mean, it's not bad advice. No. But Trinity Grammar fought you at every turn, didn't they?
Yep.
The story is that they spent over $1 million in legal fees.
That figure was put to them, and they didn't deny it. So it could be a lot more. Yeah.
And what did they argue? They argued that the offending didn't occur on school premises. Is that correct?
That's what they started with. It didn't occur on school grounds. I would argue that we normally took a school bus to the play fields, where now is the Homebush Olympic Stadium, and back in my school days, that was a lovely tip surrounded by the playing fields where we did our running and football and cricket.
Full of toxic chemicals back in those days.
The cross country took us right across the tip wasteland.
Yeah.
But,
So they effectively argued that because a lot of the abuse occurred either off school grounds, even though Futcher was a teacher at that school, and the grooming had occurred for the most part on the school grounds, and that he that he went to these sort of camps.
And that was their next bit. These camps weren't authorised, sanctioned school camps. they were something Mr. Futch was doing off his
Well,
own.
by the pervert headmaster,
Doing off his own
or
bat.
the criminally negligent
Exactly.
primary school
Yeah.
principal.
And it had come up in the court trial. He was asked directly, did he get permission for the camps? And he said he certainly did from the headmaster. And the headmaster, we even had a speech day where he comes back and congratulates those teachers for giving up their time to teach the boys some wonderful new experiences. As we had some wonderful new experiences, I can tell you, Jack.
Yes, and also what occurred, and we've mentioned this before in regard to the criminal processes, but also what occurred is this failure to keep adequate records, the failure to provide adequate records that would be relevant, that could provide an evidentiary base for the civil action. And so, again, because either out of laziness or something worse, these records weren't available.
And unfortunately, those particular years, Jack, not any other year, ask them for it. They got 1933s if you want it, but they haven't got 73 to 78, I think it is, something around those sort of dates. And then, as I said, same for the insurance policy. They just cannot find who for the life of them was insuring them at that time. And this leads us into the unfairness of even starting a legal action against this poor little school.
Poor little things. So remind me again, did you win and your victory was overturned, or did you?
No,
you won. You lost, and then the appeal.
Well, we never
confirmed that loss.
Basically what they managed to do, and which hurts too, we didn't get a trial. We didn't hear the evidence. The whole thing for them was to quash the matter and call it a draw, basically legally, because you can't defend the matter. So
again, over $1 million that they spent.
Yep. Well, the first judge who heard it all, he said this thing's proceeding to trial. I think that was Garling. He then handed it on to Judge Rothman, who, again, we had 2 days of arguments about why it was unfair for them to have a trial.
So sort of mediation type process?
Well, this was in court, them saying this is why it's unfair, them saying they even referred to themselves as a small community school providing valuable education in the western suburbs. And I must say, that even got a chuckle out of the judge, But and he said, overwhelmingly, there is no reason why this shouldn't go to trial, and hear the weight of the evidence. The box you've seen them wheeled in. We had so much evidence over, because we're now talking a couple of years that Porter's lawyers have been running this case, and and we'd done a lot of work ourselves. We'd phoned school friends. We'd found out other things. Friends were sending, have you seen this speech where Sanders says in the speech, we had all this evidence, but their thing was it's just not fair. We can't defend the matter, so we shouldn't have to. Now that, to me, is illogical to the extreme, and being the person that's against it, it hurt. It causes all sorts of anger and pushes you mentally right to the edge.
I can't imagine.
Especially after
this is the ultimate betrayal. You've been let down by police. You've been let down by the school in the first place. You've been who've employed this monster, and then the cops have failed you. Finally, some decent police investigators come along. You do get your day in court, and when it comes to that time to basically accept responsibility, in legal terms liability, and compensate you for your loss, they just fought everyone, and they won. And they won.
And so to finish this off, so Judge Rothman said this is overwhelming, we're going to trial. Now, what I've been told legally, he was so overwhelming in our favour that this left the door open to an appeal. If you'd been a little bit more casual about it. So they appealed again.
They appealed that ruling.
So we're now in the Supreme Court before the 3 judges, as you know.
And full bench.
Full bench. And, what can I say? Justice Bathurst, in his favour, found in their favour. He found that it was quite reasonable that they'd lost the records. There was no evidence of anything wrong, shredding along these lines, and that, yes, it truly was unfair for this school to have to mount a defence when both headmasters were dead. Records were lost. insurance policy lost. So you, sir, can basically fuck off and not get your day in court. And on top of that, you can also pay costs.
So they hit you for costs?
Hit me for costs. Now, this then put us in the position where I was potentially owing Trinity Grammar hundreds of thousands of dollars. I had nothing, which up until that point had been something my lawyers said was a good thing because they won't be able to get anything out of you. We're sure this is all tactics. It'll get right to the day they'll settle. Well, of course, we never saw that. They were never going to sit down with us. Even when they were court-ordered to mediation before this, they had offered me nothing and offered to pay legal fees only. So we got that decision. And obviously we were crestfallen. The lawyers were crestfallen. It was obvious we were going to trial all these other judges, and now it was over. We were left with the one option of going to the High Court, which we decided to do. And
you were told by Trinity Grammar's lawyers, if you do this, we'll ruin you.
Well,
we'll ruin you financially.
Well, they actually said,
if you lose, we'll kill you. We'll destroy you.
We'll destroy you, and we'll actually sue you for the redress money that you'll still be entitled to.
Wow.
So the much smaller amount of what someone referred to as a pittance for what
it is a pittance. The NRS has a cap of compensation at $150,000. It was originally argued to be $200,000, but $150,000 is the cap. And as I understand the NRS, that $150,000 is rarely paid. It is very, very rare.
Yeah, and I got fairly close to that, which says someone took it seriously, which was a good thing. But we took it to the High Court. It was actually, and I believe this could be a trivia question if anyone's interested, but I was told by our lawyers my case was the first case ever to be lodged online at the High Court.
Right.
And it was all ready to go, and then that's when basically the lawyers said to me, look, given the nature of the High Court at the moment, given the fact that if we do lose, they will come after you. They've shown that. They've shown no goodwill up till now, and that we want you to at least get something for your life going on.
The NRS.
We decide that it's up to you. We're willing to run it, but their final advice was to walk away and to sign this huge non-disclosure agreement. And I can't sue about anyone to do with the Anglican Church anywhere in Australia. It seems to the Seafarers Mission in Wagga.
Anyone who's actually driven past Trinity Grammar at some point.
Trinity Grammar, but it's everyone else. I can't, there's all the schools, but there's all these other places. Anyway, signed off on that, and obviously then moved to the redress scheme.
So back now to your last day at school. Well, you weren't actually on the campus, but you've got these people in front of you. Did they ever because now you're talking to the current school leadership who had made this decision to play the hardest form of ball they could come up with. Did they ever accept anything? Did they accept that they had been morally wrong?
Look, that day was better than I thought in the end. I felt that the three people there genuinely did turn up to engage.
You told me that they burst into tears.
They did cry, definitely, especially the two in the room. Headmaster being on Skype, a bit harder to see. But I said to him, because we had ex-school friends who were now top businessmen running multinational companies in Australia. One of them particularly, his father had been a prefect. He'd been a prefect. They both got married at the school, a long Trinity tradition, went and appealed to the headmaster to please do the right thing by these boys and just compensate them, finish it. And the new headmaster at the time said to him that he was washing his hands of the matter as he was the new headmaster and was only looking to the future, and that all those previous matters would be handled by the school council. It was also said to him that they couldn't possibly play out because they had so many of these matters, which to me
obviously they did.
A sad indictment of the school and still not a reason not to do the right thing. But yeah, do you want me to read what I actually was able to
Yes, please.
on the day, mate? Because I think it captures my feelings. And so, and this was later read out by them. That they again, I'd say they didn't just listen to it. They then went and read this letter and my victim impact statement at a later council meeting, which was brought on.
You actually did provide a victim impact statement when Fulcher was first convicted, or when he was convicted. So you were able to, use that as a basis of the sort of pain and trauma that you've suffered as a result of the abuse. And this is what I read out to them directly, and then we did have discussions, and it went for much longer than I thought. But so to the scum it may concern. Just to make it clear to you, I don't and never did accept your hollow apology, as it is as hollow and worthless as you are as people. You really are some of the most contemptible, abhorrent humans to ever steal oxygen. You are all headed like sheep by Peg, the Anglican version of Pell. Reviled by any right-minded person, Peg should have resigned with Coogis after the disgusting performance at the Royal Commission. Instead, he is still on the school council. You know we were abused on school-sanctioned camps. The number you happily employed is staggering, your inability to admit any wrongdoing beyond any moral person's comprehension. You lied and covered up, but ultimately were called out at the Royal Commission but learnt nothing. You think you can replace a headmaster and move on? Wash your hands clean? Doesn't work like that. Your current headmaster is as stained as the blind hog, the pedophile Rod West, the pathetic Coogis, and everyone before and after, because you never made amends for the past. You may have spent millions of dollars to win a legal point, finally winning with Chief Justice Bathurst's hard-for-me-to-understand decision in the Supreme Court. You will pay me, but you will still pay. You will pay me more in redress than you ever offered me in one-sided mediation meeting, where I turned up in good faith only to face more abuse by your inability to do the same. You instead practice litigation till exhaustion, regardless of the damage or pain you cause. You will pay even more in the court of public opinion for years to come, as I intend at every opportunity, which are numerous and growing, to let all of Australia know what a sick collection of pond life you all are on the school council, and the pathetic obfuscation of your duty of care to old boys. If you care for your child's welfare, don't send them to this institution, will be my message. As old boys, we stood up and told the truth. It's a shame and stain on the school that won't go away, that you wish to cover up and deny the same facts and truth. Do you think after that spray, do you think they've learned anything?
Well, mate, to be honest, I can only go off what I've been told by the current headmaster.
And there has been a sincere...
He sent me a sincere email and saying that they had made changes both to the way on their school website, where things like that as a first contact. And they have also said to me in that same email that based on what they learnt from what I had told them, and that they had actually had a mediation with a former student and had settled that to his agreement, and that ongoing they were going to change their practices, and that letter, along with my victim impact statement, had been read out at the school council, had led to a long discussion about the past and the future. From my point of view, hoping that obviously the future will mean a whole different way, much like many of the listeners would have heard probably if they followed it at all, the Melbourne and the Pell response did for the Catholic Church, you know.
Well, I think it's you've paid a very, very high price for that, Rob. You paid a very high price individually for that. I thank you for your time today. This show often focuses on QAnon and QAlign groups and the sort of nonsense makers that sort of weaponise child sex abuse for money and clout. But your story is a genuine story, a story of abject failure almost everywhere. It is a lesson for us all, but it's a lesson that you had to pay such a high price for. I want to tell you, Rob, you're a better man than them. You're a better man than your tormentor, obviously. You're a better man than the people who ran that school at the time. You're a better man than the police who failed you. You're a better man than the courts who failed you. And thank you for your time today.
Well, thanks, Jack. And as you know, that at least we got he's still in jail.
Yeah, good. Hope he dies there. You have been listening to the Conditional Release Program with your host, Jack the Insider and Joel Hill. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. And if you've enjoyed our bullshit, throw us a 5-star review on your podcast app.
Jack can be found on Twitter, still at Jack the Insider, hasn't changed. And Joel on at Crunchy Moses with a K. And we set up a Facebook page, find it fairly easily. Just search for us. We're so easy to find. But as we say every week, promoting a podcast, easier said than done. It sucks. So please share the episode any way you can. Make flyers. Stick them on lampposts. I don't give a shit. Just get us more
tattoos.
listeners.
Become human billboards for the Conditional Release Program.
If you do, I'll send you a very
stubby
big
holder
merch
there,
pack.
right, for sure. Yeah,
mate.
Yeah, the Patreon is up and running, and we ask listeners to consider throwing a few dollars our way.
For as little as $5 a month, you have access to all sorts of bonus content, all sorts of cool shit. If you give us a bunch more money, you get other benefits, like you can even record us. You can even watch us record the show. Yeah, there's all sorts of cool stuff.
You can't record us, but you can watch us record the show. And we remind listeners that should any of the content in today's program raise any issues for you, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or Beyond Blue 1300 22 36 46. It's been pretty grueling. And finally, all feedback, tips and death threats should be sent to the Conditional Release Program at gmail.com. We would love to hear from you on this program alone. And if you have any questions or expressions of support for Rob, we'd be happy to pass them on. Thanks, listeners.
Good on you, man. Thanks.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you to Rob. Thank you for your time, mate. Well done.
Thanks, mate.